All right. So this question is, what is community caretaking? Is it, fall under exigency? How does it relate to other investigations and so forth? And it's a great question. So just guys, if you don't know me, my name is Anthony Bandiero. I'm an attorney and senior legal instructor for Blue to Go Law Enforcement Training. I'm trying to catch up on all the great questions that I've gotten over the last couple weeks, and I'm in Los Angeles teaching at HIDA. Guys, thank you HIDA for having us. It's a great class, and you guys are a great training partner. So I'm actually doing something different. Normally I'm like in the car, in the studio, but I'm like, I want to get some air. I want to kind of talk to you guys while I'm walking around and looking at beautiful Los Angeles. So, okay, so look, community caretaking is a doctrine that essentially says, look, when the police are helping people, right? When they are helping people, then the regular probable cause criminal investigation rules do not necessarily apply, right? No probable cause requirements, not necessarily exigent circumstances are required, because we're trying to help people. So let me give you some examples of community caretaking. Towing people's car, community caretaking. Why do you tow people's car if it's not required by the law? Why do you tow, why do you do inventory searches, right? Because you're trying to make sure that their property is not damaged, things are not stolen, and all that kind of. So you're trying to help the people. You're not trying to punish them. You're not trying to teach them a lesson, to not backtalk the police. You're just saying, hey, look, if we're gonna tow your car, we're gonna make sure it's safe. Another example of community caretaking is medical calls, right? If somebody is, calling 911 and says, hey, I can't breathe, and they hang up, or the phone goes dead, right? And police are in the backyard, climbing ladders, trying to get up to an open window, and potentially even breaking down the door. That is community caretaking. Now, the thing about community caretaking is that the cops should have a proper motive, right? They shouldn't use community caretaking as a ruse, as a short circuit to get into people's homes, right? A short circuit to get into people's cars, right? We don't want to use community caretaking. We don't want to tow people's cars just with the primary purpose to try to find evidence when we don't have probable cause. So community caretaking it does usually require a good motive. And that is actually kind of different if you really think about it. Community caretaking is not really this is treated differently than criminal investigations. You see, criminal investigations don't necessarily require a good motive. They just require what's called objective reasonableness. You just got to have the lawful authority to do what you did, right? So, for example, pretext motor vehicle stops. A pretext motor vehicle stop that is not based on race, national origin, religion, and so forth is not prohibited. The question for the court is, does the officer have the right to pull the vehicle over under these circumstances? If the answer is yes, then the cops can do it, right? So, let's go back down the hill over here. So, but with community caretaking, the courts are going to be more critical when cops are doing things that they may see as ulterior motives. Let me just give you a great example, okay? Cops hear a medical call go out for a guy living in apartment 101. Well, they know or believe that this guy's involved in drugs. They don't know, they believe, right? They don't have probable cause, they don't have anything like that. Just a little birdie is kind of like telling the cops that this guy's selling drugs. Well, normally police do not go on these medical calls. It's all fire. If fire has a problem, they'll call for police assistance and so forth. But the police want to see inside this guy's house. So they go on a medical call. They assist fire, they go inside the house, and while inside the house, bingo, plain view evidence. There is a chance that when that goes to court, and the defense attorney kind of gets out of the cop, hey, do you normally go on to medical calls? What's your criteria? And if the defense attorney can prove that really the only primary motive that the cop went on that medical call was to see inside that house, there's a good chance that that evidence will be suppressed. they will see that the cop used the community caretaking function as a subterfuge, as a short circuit around the Supreme Court's probable cause requirement, exigency, because we're dealing with the home and all that kind of good stuff, warrant and so forth. All right, so that's community caretaking in a nutshell. I do want to bring up one, I think this is probably why the cop is asking, this officer asked this question, is that there was a very, very important Supreme Court case that came out called Caniglia versus Strom. It was a case that originated out of Rhode Island, and it involved essentially a husband who made some threats about killing himself because he was arguing with his wife, and he said, you know, he had a gun and so forth, and he owned the gun. I'm not sure if the gun was out or whatever, I forget, but he said, why don't you kill me now and get it over with, right? And look, the wife was so in fear of her safety that she actually left the house that night and went to a hotel. In the morning, she tried calling the husband, no answer. She thought, man, maybe he actually killed himself. So she calls police, they go down there, knock on the door, he actually answers, so he did not kill himself, and he agrees to go have a medical evaluation, but allegedly said, as long as you guys don't take my guns, right? And they're like, hey, look, if you go voluntarily, we have no reason to take your guns because you're not an imminent threat and so forth. But if you just go and just make sure that you're okay, we won't take your guns. So they go back and talk to the wife and let her know what's kind of going on. And allegedly, right, this is not necessarily exactly, we don't know exactly what happened, but allegedly the cops still went into the house without the wife's permission. That had to be sorted out later. We'll figure that part out. But allegedly the cops went inside the house without consent and without the wife's consent, which she certainly could give it, and recovered his firearms. And he sued. And they gave him a really hard time to get the firearms back. And ultimately, because they called this, the entry, they called it community caretaking, right? Well, the U.S. Supreme Court said community caretaking does not apply to warrantless entries into a home unless they're based off of some form of emergency, exigency. And we wouldn't even call that community caretaking, we would call that the emergency aid exception, right? So just keep that in mind. All right, guys, so hopefully I added some context to community caretaking. Community caretaking, by the way, you know, we were on this for 7 minutes. It's a very complicated subject. So hopefully if you have something specific about community caretaking, I want you to ask it. Otherwise, I hope I've contributed to your knowledge. And with that, my friends, have a good night. Signing off from LA. I'll see you in the next city. Thank you. Stay safe.